On average, it takes about 8 minutes to finish a 20-page manga chapter, which means if you were to read a 300 chapter story all the way through, no breaks, no nothing, you'd be reading for 40 hours straight. So I want you to imagine at the end of that long ass stretch of staring at words and pictures, you turn to the last page to conclude the glorious journey you put yourself through, and you see a picture of a main character taking a shit and then flipping you off. That's kind of the experience I've grown to be wary of when reading shonen mangas in general. Typically, that's not really an experience I get to have, as most shonen mangas tend to be super chronic, constantly rebooting, extended, expanding upon themselves over and over and over again, until eventually you reach less of a story and more of an entity of entertainment that seemingly has no conclusion in sight. Of course, stories that have parts can be concluded. I mean, the ending of Naruto Shippuden is about as solid of an ending as, you can really ask for. And JoJo quite literally has 8 endings, technically, and it's still ongoing because the creator has his own stone mask. And Dragon Ball Z technically has had a conclusion for 2 decades now. But everything I named has some sort of continuation or further exploration because, in my personal opinion, it just slowly begins to kind of cheapen the value of an actual conclusion, though. It doesn't help that typically the longer a series goes on, the more polarizing or just genuinely bad the quality of the writing can get. And whether that's due to a switch of hands in the writing, decline in writing ability, or too many editors just trying to squeeze funds out of the cash cow that the mangaka created, it doesn't matter. What matters is that a series that millions of people can fall in love with can sometimes fall deeply into despair and rot, leaving behind an empty, dry husk of what used to be love and soul, now only being monotony and longing for the good old days. Now, it's bold of me to say this, like ending your manga is how you avoid all of this. In fact, when you end your manga, now you have an even higher chance of attracting polarizing and hateful opinions. Take, for example, My Hero Academia. When Horikoshi first wrote chapter 431 of the series, officially ending it on the note of a grown-up Class 1A and their further endeavors, the internet and even the fanbase was divided. Many argued that this conclusion was shallow and left much to be desired, while others believed Horikoshi failed to understand what the audience actually wanted from these characters. Now, much of this discourse seems kind of silly, especially when you look at the fact that not only was My Hero's final arc incredibly well received when it was animated, as it's one of the highest rated anime seasons of all time, but the recent extra episode animated to adapt that specific bonus chapter has been incredibly well received for numerous reasons. So, what actually happened here? In My Hero's case, leaks and faulty transitions of the story's final dialogue left a lot of confusion amongst the fanbase on what exactly the cast relationship was at the end of the story, which of course led to people constructing their own conclusions, most of which were much worse than the actual implied story that Horikoshi came up with. And this can happen incredibly often. An audience itchiness and excitement to view a story can end up leading to its very downfall when it comes to the public perception. Just take, for example, now, Jujutsu Kaisen and I have a very, very love-hate relationship. What Gege crafted in less than 300 chapters was objectively impressive. Hell, I'll be the first to tell you that Shibuya is one of my favorite shonen arcs in recent times to this day. I stand on that very confidently. So there's no easy way to say that Gege's last hurrah with the story was unenjoyable, to say the least. Now, there's plenty of factors that go into that. Like what I said, drag down My Hero's last few chapters, go to the absolute over the wall for Jujutsu Kaisen. Now, consuming Jujutsu Kaisen through leaks on TikTok and Twitter is definitely not how that was supposed to be shared with the public. And popular accounts constantly sharing images of the chapters days before their official release with news like headlines showing the action instead of the actual manga itself giving you the narrative. It's like within one arc, no, not even within one fight, those 200 chapters of subtext and subversive writing just became like UFC matches with gigantic moments of unironically aura and hype moments filling those gaps. But most of these thoughts don't even really matter because 1 year later, Gege made Modulo, a continuation that honestly has some of the most powerful moments the series has ever had, and kind of just erased any bad will that I had about JJK to begin with. And it's great that that can happen. An ending that can commonly be seen as disappointing can get a shot at a more positive outlook with, some good execution. But not everyone gets that opportunity. In fact, lots of shonen mangas don't get that opportunity and they get axed. The thought of your series doing so badly to the point that Shonen Jump probably just doesn't even want it on its pages anymore is sad. It's hard to even think about that. It's a dream for lots of people, myself included, to make a story that millions can consume. And it's easy to think that some of these mangas were just not good and that's why they don't deserve to be in the magazine no more. But then you read premature endings and you feel it. The hollowness of those last few chapters. Mangakas try to stitch together the best type of conclusion that they can that really falls short of everything that they wanted to do. And those endings aren't great. Most of the time, actually, they're pretty terrible. But they scream, I tried my best, and there's not much else I can do. And honestly, I think they deserve more applause than, well, some of the ones that actually get to end on their own terms. And it's hard to say all this and then pretend like I know the sweet spot to ending a shonen. Like, I guess I can cite JoJo. Like, again, they've done it 8 times, but that's mostly an exception that I don't think many people should try and follow in general. In this era of shonen manga, the 500 plus chapter format just seems to be completely dead in the water. Many mangaka just aren't in the mood to make that anymore, or just feel like their stories don't require such excruciating lengths to begin with, which is a thought I agree with. Like, it's fun to cheer on One Piece and hope that Oda makes 500 more chapters about his story, but the longer they go on, the more intimidating they get, and the more the grandiose myth of the future of the series becomes, to the point that it kind of skyrockets out of any reasonable expectation. Like, even though Goda is a good writer, I doubt he'll ever make an actual satisfying answer to what the One Piece is. I just don't think that's something that can happen. And there's cons to committing that much time to a singular idea. More and more mangaka are open to ending their series to mild or positive reception in exchange for the ability to develop more ideas in the future. And that's okay. I mean, in my experience, tight-knit series with more focused story structures and fully thought-out ideas tend to be more gripping and satisfying all the way to the finish line. That's why series like Full Metal and Chainsaw Man Part 1, or any of the singular JoJo parts as a whole, just feel more satisfying in the end. Their length and structure is just more feasible to understand or follow along with, to the point that you don't even want to know what comes next because the pacing kind of just does the storytelling for you. And especially with recently, it'd be a lot easier to just, dog on any of the recent mangas that have ended, like Black Clover or Chainsaw Man, dog on them completely, say that their ending sucked. But at this point, I feel like I'm too empathetic to the idea that mangas are just a completely different medium from any other type of book or serialized comic. So at this point, I can only just ask that these authors, they just write from the actual soul when they make their endings. And who knows, even if the general public doesn't agree with their outlook, the outcome of the story, at least I can understand that they had a vision that they were able to fully fulfill on. That's kind of all you can ask for at this point. Because what am I going to ask for from Boruto at this point? It's nothing. I couldn't understand the vision if I even wanted to. Same for Super or whatever the hell is going on with Togashi. These series are so big and wide that I feel like any expectation for a satisfying conclusion has completely died in the water. And I'm kind of just waiting to see what bullshit they pull out to extend this shit even further. Which is a little sad, but when you're making a lot of money, that's kind of just how it is.